Okay, we are recording. So, all right. So tonight, what I'm going to be focusing on is chapter 4, a little bit on chapter 5. I'm going to reiterate some of the key dates, and I'm going to touch on some things that have to do with requirements from the grad office and the other thing. Oh, Heather, what you just mentioned too. I'm gonna talk about the a little bit about the at the end the presentation as well. So with that, at this point, hopefully you have your chapters 1 through 3 completed and turned into me. I may not have gotten a feedback to you yet. I'm giving feedback as they come in. So if you have if you've turned in at this point, if you've turned in chapter 3 to me, you're going to have feedback to me from me by this weekend if you haven't gotten it already. So at this point, you're on track if you've gotten those first 3 chapters into me, and no worries at all at this point. Even if you're going to have to do edits, you're on track at this point. I would say by this point, go ahead and make sure your other committee members are looking over your first 3 chapters as well. So let me go through some specific timelines that I want to hit on again. You'll see them come up on a couple of slides that I'm going to have. But by April, no, we just did that. You just had chapter 3, April 22nd. By May the 12th, you'll be turning in your chapter 4 to me. I'm going to touch a little bit on what that could be looking like today as well. So that'll be May 12th. A week later, chapter 5 will be due on May the 19th. And I'll talk a little bit about that as well today. By June the 6th, you will need to have every committee member signed off on your paperwork, which means prior to that, you will have needed to have done your defense. Figure a couple weeks prior to that, you should have done your video defense. So we're going to talk about that today as well. And then everything has to be into the grad office, I would say prior to June the 11th, so there are no surprises from the grad office. So we're going to touch on all of that a little bit today. So with that, before I move into chapter 4, are there any questions on what I just said for some of the dates?
Yeah, I have a quick question. I turned in my chapter 3 a while ago. You've already given me your feedback. I turned it into my committee as soon as I got your go ahead.
Mhm.
And my committee hasn't even looked at it, I don't think yet.
How long ago, what would that have been?
About a week ago.
I would, did you ask for a timeline on it? I would say give it through the weekend would probably be a week and a half. Is that right?
Yeah.
Okay. I would touch base with them after
Okay.
after about a week and a half. You could just gently say, just checking in to see if you wanted me to do any edits on my first 3 chapters, and you could say something like follow up with, I'll be sending you my chapter 4, and what was the date I said by May 16th. So you kind of give a gentle reminder after the weekend if they haven't. But I'd say
Okay,
a
perfect.
week and a half is a fair amount of time for them.
Okay, thank you.
Sure. Um, in fact, well, I'll go over that when I go over the video presentation. Well, I'm just going to tell you, I put in the directions to make sure to give 10 business days on the for the video presentations before getting feedback from the committee. So kind of maybe go with that as well with that, but week and a half is good. Anyway, any other questions on as far as key dates or yeah, on that before I go to chapter 4? Okay. I am going to share my screen and hopefully I'm doing this. Hopefully I'm getting it where I want it to be. Yes, I am. Okay, so I have some slides here. And this is some of the things we're going to talk about today. The chapter 4, the project, chapter 5, which is kind of the reflection, then working with Writing Center and video presentation, some of the grad requirements, which I did not put up there. But chapter 4. So I would say um, this is due by May the 12th, and I'll have an assignments folder up for you as well. On this, go ahead and put it chapters 1 through 4, but chapter 4 is the one I'll be focusing on, but put them all together like you did for chapter 3. You'll put in an assignments folder, which I have not put up there, but it'll be up there next week. It will likely be your longest chapter, but it won't necessarily be your longest written text chapter, if that makes sense. Um, because what you're doing is this is where you're actually showing what your project is you're doing, and everybody's doing different things. Some people are doing curriculum design, some people are doing book projects, some people are setting up professional development they're going to do for others or putting together websites. So it's going to look different on what you're going to have in there. There's not a specific way that's the same for everyone, but there are things that you will have in there. You will have the visuals of what you're doing. Like if you're doing lessons or units, a curriculum, then you're going to have all of those specific lessons in there. And you're going to provide in text visuals. With the visuals, you're going to provide with text as kind of a lead up into that to those on a detailed explanation of what this is, why you did it the way you did it. For example, you're going to be talking about how the expectations you're going to be talking about that it adheres to best practices within the literature that you reviewed. So the reasons that you're actually putting this, that you're doing this. Um, and again, it's going to look different for everyone. I would definitely talk about how your project aligns with best practices from the literature review as well. So if you're doing curriculum design, include the lessons, any of the instructional materials, any assessment materials that you would use. You may have those on a website, but also I would include visuals, even if you have it on a website or on Google Slides, where you would put those links in there, but provide screenshots of images from that you're going to put in chapter 4. So and the same thing would be if you're doing a book project on there. Provide sample chapters in there or provide visuals that you might have from in there. And then with that, like you might have a visual of a part of a chapter from your book project in there that might be in a table or might just be there as text. But prior to that and after that visual, what you'll have is an explanation of why this chapter is so critical, how it's fitting into best practices that were in the literature review as well. Same thing with any of these. If you're having a website, professional development, you're going to put all the materials you have in there. Now, you might do this different ways, or when I'm giving feedback, I might you might have those in there as figures, but I might decide it might be better to have those in as an appendices because generally, if you say have multiple pages, it's better to put that in an appendix than it is in a figure because it breaks up the text too much. But I'll work with you on how that will look. So that's basically what you're going to have in there. But again, I start as you can look on here, it says step 1. I'd begin with an introduction on what you're doing, what's going to be in here, um, why you're doing this. Then you again, each of the visuals, step 2, you'll provide it. Where's my cursor? I can't find my cursor there. You'll provide a narrative to accompany the visuals. And then at the end, I would just kind of have a wrap up in there on how this adheres to best practices. And that's going to be your chapter 4. It's going to be long, it's going to be dense, just because you're going to have so many visuals in there. So the work that you've been doing on here, the actual additional written text will probably be shorter than most of your other chapters. So as I'm sitting here talking, I'm going to stop sharing briefly, maybe, and ask if there's any questions when it came to that.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Um, So I am doing the children's book with the parent guide that accompanies it. And you and I have spoke before about how my illustrator won't have all of the illustrations done.
Just fine.
Um, but I will turn in what I have. So should I turn in the text that I've written for my book and the parent guide, even if there aren't the visuals to accompany that?
Yes, yes.
Okay.
Yeah. And with that, like on those aspects, I'd have an explanation in there on how this why this fits into what you want, what you're providing for them. Like what's the educational component behind this? Does that make sense?
Okay. Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
My last question in on that same note, obviously there's going to be pages of text that have accompanying pictures. Do you like when I turn it in, do you want it laid out like that so the text would be on its own page as it would be in the book itself, even if it has no visual, or should I put all the text on a single page and just page numbers above each line, or I don't know how to
Yeah, I
format that.
kind of feel like I want to see that. I would say, yeah, yours might be a little different. Why don't can you email me what the book is going to look like, the chapters and what your
Hmm.
thinking process is, and then maybe I can let you know because it, I'll be honest, that one's kind of hard for me to answer without seeing it
Without seeing it. Okay, yeah, I can do that.
because I depends on the amount of pages and what it should actually be in there. Because yeah, why don't you email that to me if you can give me a link to look at it, and I could maybe give you some suggestions. That's for
Okay,
sure.
that sounds great. Thank you so much.
The other thing I want to say to everybody about for the chapter four, I would go in there and look at past ones as well and see for formatting purposes, if you see something that looks relatively similar to what you've been doing, look and see what their format looked like. Now, some of those in there, I will say, are very short in a manner that the grad office doesn't really want you doing it that way anymore. And it might lead to us having a discussion as well. But that could also help with some formatting for chapter four. Because really, chapter four is about, okay, here's what the actual project I did was. This is why I did it. This is how specifically this adheres to best practices for this. This is how it's going to be beneficial for what I wanted to do. That's what you're looking at for that. Are there other questions when it comes to chapter four? So
No.
I mean, if you've written like if you're doing curriculum development and it's all written up at this point, a lot of it is just like you've got a lot of chapter four done then already. You're just going to be kind of writing also in how you're going to visually have that on the pages and talking about why you did this and how it adheres to best practices. So that's chapter four. That's due May the 12th. Let me share next for chapter five. So chapter five, um, a couple of things, and this will be due a week later. A couple things that a few things I put in here. This is a reflection, and while you'll have specific headers on here that aren't going to say exactly what these say, this is in essence some things that I would be thinking in terms of to be discussing in here. What did you learn as you're doing this project? What did you learn, and how did it how did what you learned connect to the literature review? How has this project influenced your own personal and professional development? What would you do differently if you could? What are you going to do with this project overall? How will you improve it? How might you tweak it just based on what you did with the two terms with it? Now, these aren't the exact questions that you have to answer. There's but this can kind of give you some ideas because it is a reflection. You may include in here, what are some limitations that you found with this project? For example, I know some of you would really have liked to been able to analyze, get feedback from humans that we just can't because of IRB approval. So that could be a limitation for you that you might feel like, well, I could have gotten a much better idea of how well this is going to work had I been able to, do student observations or do interviews with teachers for this project. So feel free to write that in there as limitations. A limitation could also be, I'm working full time and I'm having to do this large project in a couple of terms. These are all limitations that you could absolutely talk about in there as well. But these are some things to be thinking about. What I would be doing with this chapter 5 is as you're going through chapter 4, keep notes to yourself as on the whole process on, what am I learning about and how is this connecting to the literature review? Like you have things that may not exactly be going into chapter 4 that you're thinking about, but they would fit into the reflection piece. So just take notes for yourself as you're doing this process, because you might find that this is ideal to go into chapter 5 during that time. In fact, some of you, I've given feedback to some of you on chapter 3 that some of you have put things in there that actually fits better in chapter 5. So don't just completely take out. If I told you some of your stuff in chapter 3 would fit better into chapter 5, don't take it out. I mean, take that out of chapter 3, but hold on to it because you can use that in chapter 5 as well. Your chapter 5, your reflections are going pages. It's not going to be, I would say maybe anywhere from 6 to 10 pages for chapter 5. And I will stop sharing right there and see if there's any other questions on chapter 5. We'll probably, not probably, I will be talking more about chapter 5 as well as we go, as we get closer after chapter 4. I kind of want to get through chapter 4. And I will give, those were definitely not the suggested headers that I would use, but I will be giving suggested headers as well. But the reality of it is it's different for everyone, because again, some of you are doing curriculum development, some of you are writing books, some of you are doing art, doing different types of things. So based on what you're doing, changes on what your headers might look like and what the reflections might be. So those are the chapters. The next thing, I guess I will share my screen again. Let me back up. One more thing on chapter 5 on the reflection. This is where you get to just give your complete personal opinion. You don't have to get my feedback to say, now, how is this, why, give me a citation for what you're saying. This is your absolute reflection on this one. Okay. The other thing is, again, I want to reiterate, work with the Writing Center. Um, You're going to have this in APA 7th edition, including the visuals, any figures or tables that you have in there. So work with the Writing Center on that. I would set up another, if you've already gone with the Writing Center, I would set up another appointment with them in anticipation of when you think you'll be getting feedback for chapter 4, just to make sure that you've got um, your APA, everything in order. You've got grammars looking good. I'm also going to give you some grad office writing guidelines here in a bit that you're going to have to be thinking about in terms of making sure that that's all adhered to as well. So those are some other things that I want you to be thinking of to work with the Writing Center as a result. Oh, and that was the end of my slideshow. So I'm going to stop sharing and figure out what else in the world were the other things I was going to share with you. But before I do that, any other questions?
So I guess this may just be my own, I don't know. So I'm doing professional development
Uh-huh.
and I'm not working in a school. I don't have anyone to show it to.
Okay.
But so the closest project I've found was a professional development done last year. And so all of chapter 4 is I did this and this is how I did that. And I'm like, okay, so you're already done, but you're in chapter 3. So I feel like I'm worried that my chapter 3, a lot of it sounds like, like I was really going on it and then I didn't know where I was, I don't have it all done. I definitely don't have it done. So then I, felt like it was maybe, I don't know, like it'll be too thin at the end. You'll see when you read it.
From chapter 3 or
Um,
from chapter 4?
chapter oh gosh, I was on chapter 3. I'm so sorry.
Yeah, don't
Never
let me.
mind. I'll go back to that. Sorry. I'll come back. I'll ask later.
Okay. Okay. Yeah.
Sorry about that. I wasn't thinking. I skipped back in my head
Yeah,
and
well, chapter 3, you're talking about the process, the procedures of putting this together, and then that's kind of leading into chapter 4 for what the actual project is.
that's what makes sense. Okay,
Okay.
thank you. That makes complete
And I'll
sense.
be honest, and I've given this feedback to some people already that some people who are actually giving some of what they may decide fits better in chapter 4 and chapter 3. But sometimes it's hard for me to say for sure because I've like some feedback has been like, I'm not quite sure if this should be in chapter 3, but I kind of need to see where you're going with the chapter 4. It might fit better in chapter 4. So what you might find is that you end up moving some things around from chapter 3 into chapter 4. Um, so there might be a little bit of work of going back to chapter 3 once you do your chapter 4, but it won't be a lot if
Okay,
anything, it's moving some things around. But
that
that's
makes sense
again,
too.
that's on a case by case basis because
Right.
everybody's doing such different things that I'm trying to do a balancing act of general guidelines, but at the same time, everybody's got their own specific way of doing it as well.
Thank you. That makes
Sure.
sense.
So, okay, I've got a few other things I want to go over. Actually, one of them, I don't know where I put it on my screen, so I guess I'm going to share my screen. You probably just see my mess of things, and we'll see where everything is here. We'll see what I'm going to talk about next. I don't remember. I know what I'm looking for, but that's not the one. Slideshow. Don't want that. Okay, no, this one we already. Okay, this is yeah, we already kind of talked about that. Um, That's not what I wanted to talk about. Oh, I guess I'll talk about this. This isn't where I was going to go next, but I just haven't shared this with you yet, but I guess next week's week 5. So I guess I will put it up on the Canvas page soon. But this kind of gives so you can kind of start thinking about your final presentations. But this is going to be a step-by-step guide on what you're doing for your final presentations. So what you're going to be doing is you're going to create a presentation approximately 15 minutes in length, no more than 20 minutes. So keep it at 15 to 20 minutes. Um, Using a platform that will be a video recording, whichever way you're most comfortable with or on doing that. You're going to record the presentation and and then you're going to upload it onto a Google Doc. You may find it's best to do it as on a YouTube video, but I will have a Google Doc for you to upload it. It will need to be in this Google Doc. If this means you're gonna have to work with Tech at Woo to help you with that, or somebody else at the school, then definitely do that. But it needs to be in that Google Doc because it's gonna have to be we need it in one place where everything's located, and also so the easy spot for the committee members to go to and look at your video presentation. But I break this down on the guidelines on different slides where you'll put everything on your slides up here. And again, I'm not going to read through every single one, but 10 slides is enough. I mean, if you want to have links on here to share as well, but this is a loose guideline on what it would look like, then give hopefully some helpful links as well. Some tips on here. I thought I gave the date on here, but maybe I didn't. And I should go in here and I'm gonna have to make an update. I want to go in here and give you specific dates, but assume you're going to give your committee about 10 days to review it. I said 10 business days, I guess 10 days. And we want you to have that signed by everybody, I said by June 6th. So I would, in essence, try to have this done 2 weeks at least before June 6th, because you don't want to get this to them on, you don't want them to get their feedback from them on June 6th. So the feedback might be that there's some additional questions that they have before committee members are willing to sign off on it. So I would suggest, and I didn't put a date up here yet, I would suggest, trying to do this in my head at the same time, approximately, I would say May 22nd, May 23rd, try to have this done, this presentation done, and have it up there on an approximate date. And I'll fix that to put that on there. But that's what it's going to look like. And then the committee members, we will all look at it. I would, you'll want to give them a date, say about, ideally, if you can have it done by May 22nd, 23rd, I would just say, my committee chair is asking you that if you could have this back to me by June the 1st of your feedback. That way they know how long they have. The other thing is committee members are all, not all, but many of them, especially if you've got committee members that are faculty at Western Oregon, are more than likely on multiple committees. So giving them that amount of time to review it is critical, because they're likely to be reviewing more than just yours, and in addition to teaching their classes and doing their other advising as well. So that I will make sure that is up here when I put probably next week's items up on Monday morning. I will make sure that this is up there so you can at least start getting an idea of what you're going to do. But you're just giving a 15-20 minute max overview on your presentation on the video of what you're doing, and no more than 10 slides. Now, if you want, again, if you want to include links and to things and show on there in addition to the slides, that's fine as well. Just keep it to 15 to 20 minutes. Are there questions on this so far?
So there's an archive of projects we can go and look at. Is that true for these video presentations as well, just so we can kind of get an idea of what that looks like?
I'm pretty sure some of the
That would be great.
archive of projects also have their videos on there.
Okay, cool. I'll check those out. I didn't notice.
Heather, I'll double. Was that Heather who just asked that?
Yes. Yeah.
I'm gonna make a note to double check on that, but I'm pretty sure that I saw that some of those are up there.
Okay, and it's going to be me just sharing my actual project,
Yes.
kind of like I did in chapter 4, like showing what I've done and talking about why I did it.
Well, yeah, that will be on some of the slides, but you'll start off by, who you are, talk a little bit of overview of your project, why, the rationale of it. Then you are
Okay.
going to give a couple slides on some of the what were the key themes coming out of the literature. You're not going to go over every single bit of literature, but you'll hit on some of what were some of the key literature, what was some of the key themes that came out of the literature. I'd keep that fairly short, and then talk about the methods, the process. And that. So, and then at the end, your reflections and implications, and how did this help you?
Okay.
How do you hope this?
So, this is kind of just a summary of the overall project, what we've already written.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, basically you are exactly, you're summarizing in a video for us the 100-ish pages that you've been working on for all this time. Other questions on that?
Just a note.
Go ahead.
Just a note, because you're on my phone and I had my laptop in case I had questions. And I just glanced through a few projects really quick that didn't have them, but there's one separately together. Independent reading is an act of collaboration. There's a 20-minute video at the bottom. So I'm glad you asked that, Heather. Thank you.
I thought I saw some on there, so maybe they don't all have them, but some do.
Right, so we can get an idea. That will be great.
Okay, yeah. And I'm gonna double check. I'm also double checking to see if there's an archive anywhere else. But if there is, I suspect Dr. Scholes, who's now on sabbatical and retiring, is the one who had those, and I don't know that he'll because Dr. Zobel took over as program coordinator after Dr. Scholes left at the end of this past year, and I don't know, so I don't think Dr. Zobel would have those, but I'll double check on those. So, but that's probably where they are at any rate.
Thank you.
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay, I am going to stop sharing and pause the recording for one moment okay, I should be recording again. Now I'm going to share something again, and what this is the thesis manual, the WU graduate thesis manual. Now, this does not completely apply to you, but some things do apply to you loosely. So I'm going to go to some pages that are important for you to know about. And this is something that I will be basically talking again as you're wrapping up chapter 5, and I want to make sure that you have things in order for the way the grad office wants to see things, or they're not going to accept it. But on page 25, this is something that is going to apply to you. And this is how things should look. You're going to have an evaluation page and a title page that I will be giving to you later. You won't have that yet, but this is going to be the first 2 pages for your project. Ignore the copyright page. You're not copywriting anything. I don't even know why they have that in there. But then after the title page, if you want, I take that back. You actually create the title page, but I will be giving you the evaluation page to go in there first. You can have an acknowledgement page. That's optional for you. But then the table of contents is required after that. So you'll have evaluation page, title page, acknowledgements page if you want it. Table of contents goes after that. Then if you have tables, and most of you do, and if you have figures, and most of you do, you'll have a list of tables and what page that they are on, list of figures, what page they're on. And then I wouldn't worry about this list of abbreviation or symbols. I don't think anybody that I'm aware of has that needs that. Then you'll have your abstract. And your abstract will be, I think it's roughly 50 to 100 words, an abstract page of what your professional project is about. Then you actually have all those pages starting with chapter 1. This is where page 1 goes. All this prior to that is not a page number. So page 1 goes here. Then so this will be chapter 1 through 5. Then after chapter 5, all those reference pages that I've been telling you to keep, that's where that goes. So some of you might have it after chapter 3 right now. It will actually be after chapter 5 where you put your reference pages. And then you may have an appendices, and that's something that we'll be talking about individually. Like some of you might, rather than putting figures in chapter 4, some of you might have like this large body of text that is 20 pages long that doesn't make sense to put in one figure while you're kind of breaking up the text and just kind of messes up the reading, and it might be better fit in an appendices, but we'll be talking about that on a case-by-case basis. I'm going to put these 2 pages that are critical to you up on the website. Not something that you have to like get nervous about at this moment. It's just something that eventually you're going to have it in this order. So I want to go over that with you now. Then the other thing that's page 25, on page 29, this is important too. Some of these are important, and I'm gonna really highlight the ones that are important, and then I got to go back to grad office and get some clarification because, quite frankly, some of the things that they have on here, they are not adhering to on some of the others that I've been seeing up there in the last couple of years. But things that they do adhere to that you have to do or they will not accept it. Your margins, top, bottom, right, 1 inch. Left 1.5 inches. Gotta have it that way. And what I have noticed in some of the projects is some of your projects, the margins are not always consistent, so you're going to have to make those consistent. It needs to be double spaced throughout, which sometimes I've been seeing some of these I've been seeing that, and I'm not messing with it yet, but it will eventually have to get fixed, and Writing Center could help you with this. It needs to be double spaced throughout. Don't like double space and like on your text, and all of a sudden you got to a new header, and all of a sudden you're going 3 spaces or 4 spaces until you get to the header. Now, double space, just keep that consistent throughout. All font needs to be Times New Roman or Arial. Those are the only two they will accept. Everything has to be 12-point font. So just do that throughout, even at your headers everywhere. Okay. All chapters begin on a new page. So through these, ending with the chapters right there, figure up here, it's got to be that way. I'm going to get back to you on the chapter titles, because the way they say it up here is the way there was a time that they required it this way. But quite frankly, I've been when I look at some of the newer ones, they're not like this. So ignore the chapter titles unless I tell you differently. The pages, they do say in the lower right-hand corner, just do it that way. I know you're going to see some that aren't that way. I'm going to double check with them, but anyway, definitely for these first four, go with that. And I'm going to put this up for you to look at, and we'll be talking about this again as you get through chapter 5. I haven't been a stickler on this one yet because I'm not as concerned about it until you get through chapter 5, because what I will be telling you at the end of chapter 5, make sure that every chapter is consistent. If you have your chapter titles bolded for chapter 1, chapter 2, and chapter 3, make sure chapter 4 and chapter 5 are as well. If your chapter 1 and introduction are in all caps, make sure the other chapter titles are as well, because there will be inconsistency there just because you won't remember what you did. I see that now, and I don't always go in and say anything about that because that could change over time. I'm talking a lot, so I'll stop. I'm gonna stop sharing and see if there's any questions. Actually, I will say something else. That was a lot of information I just gave you. I wouldn't worry as yet right now about those grad office guidelines or the final presentation as yet, because I am going to be having other meetings where I'm going to almost say the exact same thing when it comes to that. I just know we're getting to a point where some of you would just like to have all that information. But I know to others it might seem overwhelming. Right now, the focus is really chapter 4. And I would say also start taking reflective notes as you're doing chapter 4 for chapter 5, because you're going to be thinking about things coming up that will fit into chapter 5 as you're putting the chapter 4 together, but you're just not writing it yet. Have it ready to go. Put a Google, however you do it, however you write, if you handwrite notes, if you put them on Google Docs, put some notes for yourself for chapter 5, just to get it, just to be, because there's a lot of stuff you might just be able to put in there afterwards. And with that, I'm going to stop, because that's all the information that I had for you. And if there's some general questions that you want to ask, we'll go ahead and do that while I'm still recording. Or if you have some questions that you prefer to wait until we're done recording, I will wait until we're done recording, and I'll shut up.
I have a general question, I think. So I took your advice during the last Zoom. You said get with Writing Center. You guys pay for that service, so go ahead and take advantage. And I did, and I met with them via Zoom, and we were talking about APA formatting. And the tutor that I had, the person that I had expressed concern because she said what she was seeing consistently in these projects is that the expectation is APA, but what's written in that thesis manual is not APA. She said, she told me that all of my page numbers should be at the top right. And that says bottom left, I think. And so she was talking to me about that. And then in that thesis manual, it says and you said not to worry about this part right now, but I just kind of want to throw it out there because I'm trying to figure out how, because formatting is really where I'm struggling the most, I think.
Right. Okay.
And so it says in the manual, it says that the chapters should have all capitalized headings for the names of each chapter.
Mhm.
And she said in APA, you never use all capitals. And so
Yeah.
I'm trying.
Go ahead. Sorry.
I just wanted to know, like, do you prefer that I format it all according to APA and then go back and make needed changes? Or do I use the manual and do it as the manual says and go back and change things into APA formatting if that's what ends up being?
Well, yeah. See, the thesis manual does have some inconsistencies with the APA. I am most concerned about the APA. I guess I should have been a little more specific. The APA, I'm most concerned about that when it comes to references, citations. Want to make sure you have that way.
Okay.
That center has traditionally had their certain way that they like to have the margins done. Um, they have in there about the page numbers and they have that in there about the titles. But on those two things, I think, and I want to get clarification from from the grad office on those two things. I think they've made some changes now in allowing for it to be a little different. When I used to do these, I haven't done projects with the students in about 4 to 5 years. When I was doing them, they were really very sticklers on all of that, wanted all the exact same way. When I just had a conversation with them a few days ago about this, saying I was going to go over this with all of you, they outlined those first four that I was saying. But they said, but then we do have on some of these, we do have some leeway. That's why I kind of didn't, that's why I was kind of vague on the other ones. I want to make, I don't think there's concern about the titles and the pages.
Okay. Well, and it helps to just hear that really the APA should be focusing on my references and my
Yeah,
citations.
and
That's
I
helpful.
guess I thought I said that, but maybe I just said that in places. But I guess that does I should have been more specific on that when working with the writing center. Worry about that when it comes to your citations and your references,
Okay. Thank you.
and then the grammar issues. Yeah, good question because like I don't think I clarified that enough. Thanks. Are there other general questions?
I can't think of any.
Okay, I'm gonna stop recording. Maybe.